7:47 now, and President Joe Biden taking aim at the Supreme Court during his last month in office. President Biden outlined 3 reforms, including term limits, an ethics code, as well as an amendment to overturn the court's ruling on presidential immunity. Now, the president says the highest court in the land has been weaponized by conservatives and needs to be restrained.
Based on all my experience, I'm certain we need these reforms. We need these reforms to restore trust in the courts, preserve the system of checks and balances that are vital to our democracy.
However, getting these reforms passed through a Republican-controlled House and a divided Senate seems like an uphill battle. We called on our friend, CUNY constitutional law professor Natalie Gomez-Valez, to explain what it would actually take for any of these reforms to be enacted. So good morning to you, Natalie. Great to see you again.
Good morning.
All right, so let's ask you this. Was President Biden's announcement of these reforms more like a warning to the Supreme Court, being that he's now a lame duck president and will likely not see any of these reforms come to pass?
It sounds to me like a bit of a warning, but also a call to action. I mean, I have to say, it is notable that President Biden is calling for these changes. Remember, at the beginning of his term, there were calls to reform the Supreme Court, and he had a commission, and he sort of resisted it. He's an institutionalist. And for him to get to the point where he is calling for these reforms is extraordinary and sounds to me like a call to action, because it is an uphill battle. But given how the court has behaved, not only sort of changes substantively in the law, overturning well-settled precedent, abortion, affirmative action, agency regulation, other things. But this latest immunity decision really has kind of shown that the court is behaving and there's something wrong going on at the court, essentially. And some action is needed. So it sounds to me like a call to action from an institutionalist.
Yeah, all right, so let's break it down, right? Because, and start with the term limits, for example, which is protected, as you know, Natalie, under the Constitution. So I guess what would it take to undo what's already in the Constitution? What would it take to make that happen? Is it a congressional vote with the Senate and House?
No, actually, to amend the Constitution, and you're right, the Constitution provides that federal judges and justices serve during good behavior, which people say, okay, that's where they get lifetime tenure. And so there are those who argue that that means that in order to change that, a constitutional amendment would be required, which calls for, I mean, the proposal requires 2/3 of both the House and Senate, and then there's a ratification process that calls for 3/4 of state legislatures. So it is an uphill battle. And it is something that is, and it's on purpose, right? It should be something that's deliberative, that's not done willy-nilly. But we're in a place where, if you don't ask, if you don't put it on the table, it won't happen. So, yeah, but it is an uphill battle.
And the next one is, you already mentioned, his proposal to amend the Constitution to overturn the presidential immunity ruling, which Speaker Mike Johnson already said was dead on arrival in the House. So is there really any precedent for this?
There actually is. And, a couple of things could have popped to mind. There are examples of circumstances where there has been a Supreme Court decision that has prompted an amendment process. And the one that comes to mind most, because I'm preparing for class in the fall, is the 11th Amendment. There was a case, Chisholm v. Georgia, that allowed for citizens of one state to sue another state. And people were so outraged by that they started an amendment process that gave us the 11th Amendment, which itself is a mess now, but there are examples of courts, Congress responding to a court decision that is deemed sort of off the map.
Yeah, I guess I should have listened more carefully to Schoolhouse Rock, like the I'm just a bill. Anyway, sitting here on Capitol Hill.
I think that's really important that people understand how government works, right? That the amendment process will take a long time, but it involves Congress, it involves people being active, that it matters, that we understand. Like, for example, I've heard people saying they didn't understand that it was the placing certain justices on the court by Trump that led to overturning these cases now, even though it's during the Biden administration. Now, people need to understand how these things are put together. So I do think this is an opportunity for us to really look at the constitutional structure and say, you know what, ultimately, the people should have the opportunity to engage with it and change it. Yeah.
You know, and the last, Natalie, there's this ethics code for Supreme Court justice. We've heard a lot about this, right, involving Justice Clarence Thomas, for example, accepting gifts that were over a certain limit. So what's the likelihood, this seems like a nonpartisan one, that Congress could enact an ethics code for justices?
Yeah, I mean, there is an ethics code for federal judges, and there had been Chief Justice Roberts, had been prodded and said that he was, oh, we have an ethics code, but it has no teeth. It's voluntary, and from what we can see, there have been serious ethics issues that, if it were required, certain things might have happened, like recusal of Justice Thomas, recusal of Justice Alito on some of these cases, including maybe that immunity case. That didn't happen because it's voluntary. The idea was that the court could regulate itself, but that doesn't seem to be happening. And so this is an area where the Constitution does provide for Congress to make regulations for the court and how it runs. And it should be, I agree with you, this should be bipartisan. This is something that we should all agree to, that the justices of the highest court in the land should be held to a code of conduct and ethics that everyone else also should be held to, and even a higher standard.
Natalie, were you surprised at all that President Biden didn't call for the expanding of the court?
I wasn't surprised by that. He's such an institutionalist that I think it would have taken even more to have him expand the court. But I do think it says something that he has come to the place where he is saying, we need to address this court that's gone off the rails in terms of not just what it's doing, but how it's doing it. There are real concerns there around the rule of law.
We're going to have to leave it there, Natalie, out of time, but always grateful to have you and your insight. Never thought we'd sing Schoolhouse Rock together, but here we are. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Natalie.
Always great to be here.